me looks at this and says, gosh, is there anything more important than a family? More important than the effect that these people have on one another?
Well, for me, it's just about the work.
I'm finding age is something to play with. An aging person who thinks that they are at the top of their game and everything is just perfect, who trips and falls.
People think they know what grief looks like in Hollywood, but what they usually see is polished pain. The black outfits, the calm rehearsed voices, the statements checked by teams, it's all perfectly packaged sadness. But what's happening right now with Shirley MacLaine? It's nothing like that. Not even close. This isn't staged. It's raw, messy, and real. Shirley MacLaine has spent more than 70 years in this business, surviving eras most people only read about. And now, at 91 years old, she's finally speaking freely, without a script, without fear, and without protecting anyone who doesn't deserve it anymore. People are stopping mid-scroll because this isn't just another tribute. It's a revelation. Shirley isn't only reacting to losing Rob Reiner. She's exposing what was happening before everything fell apart. What she said completely changes how people are seeing this whole situation and cracks open a story that's been kept behind closed doors for years. This wasn't filmed under studio lights or written out by PR reps. It wasn't a glossy interview designed for headlines. This came straight from her home, privately, just yesterday afternoon. And the details spilling out of that conversation have a lot of powerful names in Hollywood suddenly uncomfortable, especially those who thought they knew what really went on inside the Reiner family circle. What's shocking most people isn't just what she said, but how she said it. There were no soft words, no nostalgic tears, no peaceful tone. Shirley sounded furious, drained, like someone who's seen this kind of Hollywood heartbreak too many times before and is done pretending it just happens. She made it clear.
Are you guys in rehab more than once?
That the boys can talk about that. Go ahead. She asked if you'd been to rehab more than once.
I was only there the one time. I've been more than once.
It's hard to kick, huh?
Sometimes it can be.
How many times have you been? How many times have you been in and out of rehab?
I'll be honest, it's been like 17 or 18 times.
Really? How old are you now?
Me? I'm 22.
And you started when?
Who's
talking? Where are they? Oh, right back there. Okay, right.
I started when I was like almost about to turn 15.
He was there
for like 19.
Yeah, from like 15 to 19.
And yeah, it's like been 3 or 4 years. This doesn't even work, I don't think.
Yeah, it's working. It's working.
Can I ask you a question? So what was the turning point for you? What
went down with Rob Reiner wasn't some random twist of fate. According to Shirley, this wasn't some sudden tragedy. It was something slowly closing in on Rob. She said he felt it coming, but didn't know how to face it. And the hardest part? She believes his biggest blind spot was the one no parent ever wants to admit even exists. To really understand the weight of her words, you've got to understand their history. Shirley and Rob's bond goes back decades. Real connection, not the kind that exists for photos or social media likes. They came up in the same creative circles, worked side by side, challenged each other's ideas, and shared one core belief: that storytelling was meant to move people, not just entertain them. Despite her mystical reputation and those deep talks about energy and past lives, Shirley's always been sharp, especially when it comes to reading people in real time. And what she noticed during her last visit with Rob, it shook her. She told close friends that just 3 weeks before everything came crashing down, Rob wasn't himself at all. That fiery voice people loved hearing from him was gone. The humor, the spark, the confidence, muted. She used one haunting word to describe him: shrinking.
Appropriate, father. But on this same Daily Mail report we were quoting from, one actor who was on the set of Being Charlie, he's a cast member, Eric Aud, 45, told the Daily Mail he found the dynamic between Rob and his son, Nick, troubling. They were fighting. They were arguing with each other while they were on the set. They did point out that this guy's scenes were ultimately cut from the film. Okay, maybe he's got an axe to grind. Quote, they were kissing each other on the lips, which was weird. They were bickering. They were going off on each other on set. It wasn't comfortable. There was definitely hostility there. So my question is there a likelihood Nick Riner pulls a card from the Menendez defense? We're in California. It's going to be a California jury, and says he was molesting me my whole life.
She said she sat with Rob and Michelle and the room felt heavy, like the air itself was full of tension. The energy was off. Instead of leading the conversation like always, Rob barely spoke. His attention, Shirley said, kept drifting toward the driveway outside the window. And here's the part that sent chills through everyone who heard it. He wasn't just zoning out. He was waiting, watching, nervous about who might pull up next. That single detail changes everything. Because from that point on, the story stopped feeling like simple sadness and started to sound like something much darker was brewing behind closed doors. Shirley claims the family knew that Nick had been spiraling for a while, long before any outside help was brought in. And this wasn't just a rough phase or creative burnout. She called it a full mental unraveling, an emotional storm mixed with anger and entitlement. A mix she described as dangerous. Rob, ever the peacemaker, thought he could calm it down with patience, money, and love. But Shirley told him straight up, that kind of hope wasn't going to fix what was broken. She warned him that trying to smooth it over would only delay the inevitable, not stop it. And looking back now, she believes Rob knew that too. Deep down, he understood what was coming. But he couldn't face it. That's what hits hardest. Not ignorance, but denial.
Young people have never heard of. You better like what you're doing and enjoy the process, because even if something you've made stands the test of time for a while, it's never going to stand the test of forever. So enjoy what you're doing. And films will go away and things go on and move. So just enjoy the process and enjoy doing what you're doing.
He was doing fine on the meds he had been taking. They were working. Doctors changed the meds, and it messed Nick up. It messed him up profoundly.
Without a shadow of a doubt, the mental health system in America has failed.
Not cruelty, but misplaced hope. Shirley sounds like a woman who's seen this cycle play out too many times and is done watching it happen in silence. At this point, the story stopped being just about grief. It became about warning signs, family blind spots, and the dangerous idea that love alone can heal everything. Shirley didn't hold back this time. She looked Rob Reiner straight in the face and told him, "You're feeding a shark and hoping it turns into a dolphin." That one line is echoing everywhere right now, and people can't stop talking about it. Because as more confirmed details come out, it's becoming painfully clear. Shirley wasn't exaggerating. She was warning him. And the deeper the story gets, the more it's forcing everyone to face reality. Not gossip, not rumors. Reality. What's surfacing now is being backed up by people who were actually there, not outsiders guessing from headlines. The idea that Nick Riner just suddenly snapped doesn't line up with what insiders are now revealing. According to what's coming out, and what Shirley strongly hinted at, this wasn't one shocking moment. It was a slow, dangerous buildup that had been quietly unfolding for months behind closed doors. Reports say there were several visits from law enforcement to the Brentwood property back in October and November, but none of it ever made the news. No headlines, no easy-to-find public records, nothing.
Looks at this and says, gosh, is there anything more important than a family? More important than the effect that these people have on one another? And if there's anything I've learned, and I'm continuing to learn it, is get your stuff straightened out with your parents. Because that's going to affect your stuff with your child or children. And fortunately, I got that straight with my dad before he went. You know, I would sit, and I think it was the happiest time we spent together, his year of dying. He talked about how nothing was as important as love. Not money, not fame, not competition, not progress, not overachievement.
And that silence wasn't random. When someone carries the kind of influence Rob Reiner did, problems can be quietly redirected, softened, or reframed. Officers can be reassured that everything's fine, that it's just family stress. And that's exactly what Rob reportedly did. Not out of denial, but out of protection. He didn't want to expose his son to the public eye or have him reduced to a headline. Rob was doing what any parent with a big name and bigger heart might try to do: shield his child from being judged forever by one moment. But tragically, that's exactly what ended up happening. Shirley didn't sugarcoat her reaction to the image that's now burned into public memory: Nick's face on the news. She said that when she saw it, she didn't recognize the boy she'd once watched grow up. What she saw instead was emptiness. No spark, no warmth, no trace of the kid she remembered. That eerie description actually matches something quietly shared by Tom Cruise, who's been close to the Riner family for decades. Their bond dates back to A Few Good Men, a film that defined both their careers. And those who know Tom say his loyalty runs deep. Sources claim that after everything went down, he was among the first to step in, offering private security for Rob's other children, Roy and Jake, almost immediately. That move alone shows how serious the situation felt behind the scenes.
We didn't know how it was going to end. We didn't know what essentially the plot was. We trusted Billy and Izzy. Jack and I adored each other, and that's all we knew.
Even someone like Tom, who's seen nearly every kind of chaos Hollywood can produce, was reportedly shaken by what he heard from people inside the home. Because this wasn't about a random outburst or a misunderstanding. It was about control. Money was involved, yes, but it wasn't just about that. At its heart, this was about entitlement, about a grown man who'd convinced himself the world owed him something because of his last name. And for parents like Rob and Michelle, that's an unbearable conflict. Loving your child deeply, but knowing you can't fix what's already gone too far. Shirley spoke with particular emotion when she mentioned Michelle Reiner. She described her as the peacemaker, the one who always stepped in between Rob and Nick when things got heated. The calm voice, the steady hand, the person trying to keep peace in a house full of tension. And that's what breaks people's hearts the most. Shirley believes Michelle's instinct to protect and soothe might have been what put her in danger that night. Not recklessness, but love. But what Shirley's really exposing goes beyond one family. She's calling out a pattern that's haunted Hollywood for decades, where children of legends grow up fighting shadows they can never escape. When your parent becomes an icon, the world stops seeing you as your own person. For some, that pressure fuels ambition. For others, it plants resentment that slowly eats away from the inside. Rob Reiner wasn't just a filmmaker, he was an institution. And for Nick, living under that name didn't bring pride. It built frustration. Shirley even remembered one chilling conversation she'd had with Michelle just months earlier. Michelle confided that they were planning to change the locks on the guest house, not out of spite, but fear. Fear that boundaries had already been crossed too many times. That single, quiet detail says everything. This wasn't sudden. It wasn't random.
So, Tim, we just heard from Rob and Michelle Reiner's two other children. What are they saying?
Well, they were not here in court, but shortly after this court appearance, they released a joint statement kind of describing the heartbreak and horror that has happened to them over the last several days. This is the statement from Jake and Romy Reiner saying, quote, "Words cannot even begin to describe the unimaginable pain we are experiencing every moment of the day. The horrific and devastating loss of our parents, Rob and Michelle Reiner, is something that no one should ever experience. They weren't just our parents, they were our best friends. We are grateful for the outpouring of condolences, kindness, and support we have received not only from family and friends, but people from all walks of life. We now ask for respect and privacy, for speculation to be tempered with compassion and humanity, and for our parents to be remembered for the incredible lives they lived and the love they gave."
It was a storm that had been building for months while everyone tried to stay hopeful. And when Shirley talks about it now, you can hear the exhaustion in her voice, like someone who's seen this same tragic pattern play out again and again and is finally saying, no more. The locks on that Brentwood property weren't about keeping strangers out. They were about keeping Nick out when he wasn't in control. Just imagine that for a moment. Living behind gates, surrounded by security and luxury, yet feeling unsafe around your own child. That kind of fear isn't normal, and it's the kind of fear families rarely talk about out loud. Rob and Michelle Reiner weren't trapped by fame or fortune. They were trapped by love. They couldn't bring themselves to involve authorities the way people on the outside might think they should have, because at the end of the day, Nick was still their son. That's the emotional cage Shirley MacLaine exposed, and it's absolutely chilling. But what's shaking the industry isn't just what happened inside that house. It's the silence surrounding it. Shirley didn't hesitate to call out the people who stood by and said nothing. She said there were agents, managers, and so-called friends who knew Nick was unstable. People who heard the threats, saw the outbursts, and still kept inviting him into rooms he never should have been in. They kept flattering him, feeding the ego, brushing it all off as artistic chaos instead of facing the dangerous reality. Shirley made it clear, this silence didn't come from ignorance, it came from comfort. At 91, she's got nothing left to protect. No careers to preserve, no Hollywood favors to maintain. She named it for what it is, a culture that lets power excuse danger until it's too late. According to Shirley, people watched Nick's unraveling in real time, but chose politeness over confrontation, because calling it out might have made dinners awkward or projects complicated. Now that everything is unfolding publicly, it's clear why the family is shattered and why the legal road ahead is going to be brutal for the defense. Nick's attorney, Alan Jackson, isn't known for small cases. He takes on storms that are already out of control. The legal plan seems predictable. Blame mental health collapse, argue lack of awareness, plead diminished responsibility, but Shirley isn't convinced. And based on what's being quietly hinted at, neither is the district attorney. Because behind the polite phrasing and legal language, investigators are seeing a very different picture, one that suggests planning, not panic. The forensic details, while being handled carefully, reportedly indicate that actions were taken after everything had ended. Actions that point toward awareness and effort. There are whispers of attempts to clean up, to buy time, to cover traces. That matters because it shows intent. It shows that someone knew exactly what had happened. And that's why this case keeps getting heavier by the day. The only glimmer of light in this darkness has been the way Hollywood insiders have stepped up to quietly support Rob and Michelle's surviving sons, Jake and Roy. People like Tom Cruise have offered protection and resources, but without cameras, without red carpet sympathy. Still, even that feels fragile, because as Shirley put it, no amount of fame, awards, or political connections can stop a disaster that's been growing inside your own home. When Shirley speaks, there's a deep weight in her words, a spiritual kind of sorrow. She believes Rob stayed in that house because he truly thought love could fix what reason couldn't. He thought love could correct chemistry, heal dependency, and repair years of emotional damage. And that, she said, is the tragic flaw of good parents. They believe love is armor. But as Shirley put it so bluntly, love isn't armor when you're facing real demons. Sometimes love doesn't protect you, it exposes you. Sometimes it paints a target on your back. And then there's the timeline that still haunts investigators. Authorities arrived at the home around 10 p.m., but reports suggest things spiraled long before that. That leaves a haunting window of unanswered time. Who did Nick talk to during that gap? Did anyone give him advice? Did someone tell him what to do next? There are quiet rumors, unconfirmed but persistent, about a call made to someone known in the industry for fixing problems. If that detail proves true, the investigation could widen quickly. Shirley hinted that detectives are already digging through phone logs and financial records, not just to see what happened that night, but to uncover the network surrounding Nick, the suppliers, the enablers, the people who kept feeding his instability while draining him financially. It's disturbing from every angle. Two people who spent their entire careers creating stories about love, hope, and human connection ended up trapped in a nightmare built on silence and denial. And Shirley sounds absolutely determined to make sure that silence doesn't win this time. The irony is impossible to miss. Rob Reiner's most beloved films, The Princess Bride, Stand By Me, were all about innocence, friendship, and the fragile line between good and evil. Yet his own life ended up shadowed by the very darkness he spent decades trying to expose through art. Shirley recalled how often Rob used to talk about Stand By Me, and how deeply that story resonated with him, the moment when childhood innocence slips away. He always understood that darkness can live inside young men. He just never imagined one day it would be sitting across from him at his own breakfast table. That's what makes this story hit harder than any Hollywood headline. It's not gossip, it's tragedy in real time. A story about power, love, denial, and consequences colliding in the worst possible way. Prosecutors in California are now reviewing special circumstance allegations, which carry the toughest possible penalties. Whether those are pursued fully remains to be seen, but one thing is certain. This case is shaking Hollywood to its core, and the truth still isn't done surfacing. Life without parole? That's a real possibility if this case ends in conviction. Just imagine Nick Reiner's current reality for a moment. Sitting alone in a downtown Los Angeles jail cell, the fog lifting, realizing the safety net that always caught him is gone forever. The parents who smoothed things over, made phone calls, hired lawyers, paid the bills, and kept him out of chaos. They're gone, and their absence is final. There's no one left to shield him now, no one left to call. When Shirley MacLaine was asked how she felt about Nick's future, her answer stunned people. She said she hopes he lives a very long time. At first, that sounds cold. But she explained it perfectly. She doesn't want revenge. She wants accountability. She wants him to sit with the full weight of what was lost, every single day. In Shirley's world, this isn't about punishment. It's about balance. She believes karma doesn't rush, but it never misses. And in her eyes, there's no escaping that reckoning. Her calm voice carried more power than any anger could, because it wasn't rooted in hate. It was rooted in truth. Meanwhile, funeral arrangements are being handled privately, quietly, and with deep care. Jake and Roy are doing everything they can to protect their parents' legacy from becoming a media circus. No flashing lights, no paparazzi, no chaos. Just dignity. But even without public coverage, the grief has rippled through Hollywood. You can feel it everywhere. It's heavy. It's raw. Messages from longtime friends like Billy Crystal, who shared decades of history with Rob, are short, broken, and full of disbelief. Yet what's cutting through all the noise isn't just sadness, it's Shirley's anger. And that anger matters because someone finally needs to say it clearly. This wasn't just a tragedy, it was a systemic failure. A failure to step in early. A failure to take the warning signs seriously. A failure to understand that love, as powerful as it is, doesn't always heal what's already broken. Shirley made it clear. Sometimes the people we love most are the ones we need boundaries from the most. Sometimes protecting someone doesn't mean patience. It means making the hard decisions. Her words weren't meant to comfort. They were meant to challenge. Because this whole situation forces Hollywood to look in the mirror and face a truth it's avoided for decades. A culture that protects power while ignoring pain. Entitlement, silence, denial. These things fester when no one dares to confront them. And Shirley sounds determined to make sure that changes now. But there's another layer to this tragedy that makes everyone uneasy. The estate. Talking about money after loss always feels wrong, but in this case, it's unavoidable. The legal facts matter whether anyone likes it or not. Under California's Slayer statute, if Nick is convicted, he'll be legally barred from inheriting anything. None of the fortune Rob built, none of the lifelong earnings from All in the Family, Seinfeld, or his own films would go to him. Everything would instead pass directly to Jake and Roy. But here's the haunting question. Do they even want it? Can anyone look at that money without feeling what it represents? Shirley shared something quietly devastating. She said Roy told her she doesn't care about the estate at all. She just wants the house gone, sold, leveled, wiped clean from the map. She can't imagine anyone ever living behind those walls again. And really, who could blame her? That house isn't a home anymore. It's a scar, a place where fear lived longer than peace. As the trial approaches this January, more details are going to surface, whether the family wants them to or not. Old stories buried for years will come out. Arguments, warnings, interventions that didn't work. We'll hear about times Rob tried to set boundaries and Nick pushed back harder. We'll hear about moments of tough love that only led to anger and retaliation. And that's what makes this all so heartbreaking. Because every missed chance, every silent hesitation led to the same devastating end. This is exactly where Shirley's words hit the hardest. She told everyone not to label this as a sudden collapse or random moment of chaos. She described it as a slow-motion collision, something everyone could see coming but didn't know how to stop. Not because the signs weren't there, but because acknowledging them would have forced people to face uncomfortable truths. In her voice, there's no malice, just exhaustion. Exhaustion from watching people protect reputations instead of lives. And that's why her message now resonates so deeply, because it's not just about the Riner family. It's about every situation where silence lets something dangerous grow until it's too late. Rob Reiner believed in people. With everything he had, he believed in fairness, justice, family, and the power of love to heal what was broken. Those values weren't just part of his work, they defined his life. And that's what makes all of this so painful, because the very compassion that made him great also left him exposed. His belief in patience, kindness, and second chances blinded him to the danger that had been forming inside his own home. This isn't just the loss of a public figure, it's the collapse of a legacy. Not because of critics or outside enemies, but because of a storm no one inside the home knew how to stop. It was a tragedy born from untreated mental struggles, deep entitlement, and silence from the people who should have spoken louder. When Shirley MacLaine finished her private talk, she left everyone speechless. She said Rob is at peace now, free from fear, reunited in spirit with his father, Carl. But the real pain, she said, belongs to those still here. The ones left to carry the grief, the anger, and the endless questions that may never get full answers. Shirley shared something unfiltered, something no studio rep or publicist would ever approve. She said, "Forgiveness isn't guaranteed, healing doesn't follow a schedule, and pretending otherwise only makes the hurt worse. No polished statements, no empty sympathy, just truth. And sometimes that truth is the hardest thing to sit with." At this point, Shirley isn't trying to be a spokesperson or a symbol. She's just an older woman who lost a dear friend and is furious that it ever had to reach this point. Maybe that honesty, that refusal to sugarcoat, is the most powerful way to honor Rob right now. No spin, no soft edges. Just the kind of raw honesty Rob himself would have written into one of his own films. She's done protecting reputations. She's here to tell it exactly as it happened, even if it makes people squirm. Because this story isn't about gossip, it's about truth. And every new day brings another revelation, another detail, another reminder that behind every Hollywood smile, there's a story the cameras never capture. The picture forming now isn't complicated. It's heartbreak layered over silence, denial, and missed chances. This isn't something people are following for entertainment. It's something people are following because accountability matters. The people who were lost deserve more than rumors or cover-ups. They deserve full truth, full justice, and full clarity. This isn't a movie. There are no alternate endings, no rewrites, no take two. For the Reiner family, the joyful chapters are over, replaced by a silence that doesn't fade when the cameras turn off. And what lingers isn't the headlines. It's the image Shirley can't forget. Rob Reiner standing at his window, weeks before everything ended, staring down that driveway, waiting for his son to arrive, feeling fear in his own home. That's the part that stays with you. That's the real loss. That's the truth Shirley MacLaine refuses to let fade away or be softened by time. Because some truths deserve to be faced, not buried. And as this story continues to unfold, more layers will surface. Not because people crave drama, but because silence is how tragedy repeats itself. Ignoring it would only make history rhyme again. If you want to stay updated as this case continues to develop and dive deeper into the stories Hollywood doesn't want you to hear, make sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss what's next. Drop your thoughts below in the comments because your voice matters here. There's another video waiting for you right now, breaking down even more shocking celebrity revelations. Tap that one next, and I'll see you there.